Well, yo ho ho and a bottle of canna butter. It's Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Why is that? Because it's 4 o'clock, and every Thursday at 4 o'clock I get in here. 4:20, I open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and this Thursday's no different. Thank you for joining me. Right before me was Side Stage with Trav, 1 to 3. Directly after me, Stinky Ots Music Mott, so you want to stick around for that. Then Automation with your boy Fred. He's the AI robot spelled with a P. And then Black Ring Ritual wraps up your Thursday here on the best radio station independently in the world as far as I'm concerned. RadioFreeFargo.org, streaming anywhere and everywhere on the blue and green marble you hail. We can get into your ear hole with cannabis news, cannabis legalization news, health regarding cannabis in the state of North Dakota. We got a little North Dakota news. We're going to tell you about Minnesota and the progress towards legalization that's happening across the bridge. If you're in Fargo, and Fargo is a beautiful day today, it's sunny, as long as you're looking up at the sun, as long as you don't get distracted by the mountains and mountains of snow that we have cohabitating our little spot in the world. But again, thank you for joining me. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm Wilson. I'm excited to bring you news regarding cannabis. I'm all over the world today. Afro Man's in the news. That's going to be fun. The UK is in the news. Killeen, Texas. If you remember those guys, the cops were arresting people even though they had decriminalized. They thought they could still do it. So we got news about whether or not they've been allowed to continue to do it. And so that'll be fun. And we'll talk about that at 4:20. I'm going to throw some music in here a little bit just for fun. I believe God created cannabis for us to use as we see fit. And I show him props for being so awesome. At Antioch Church every Sunday morning, 10 a.m., we do a recovery class. So if you've got a monkey on your back, or whether it be, a social media monkey or fentanyl patches, we can provide you with some help, at least an alternative to what's got you sucked down. Or if you've thrown the monkey off your back on your own, but you can still feel him pulling up your pant leg, come check it out. Life After Recovery, 10 a.m., 417 Main Avenue, and then 11 a.m. it's worship. That's where we get down and praise the man upstairs. I may run around, but I'm on stick duty. So I'll be flailing with my hands for the man who I give credit for, my being clean. And so this show's brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy, blackcottagealchemy.com, Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook. The body butter's got 1,600 mgs of CBD in there. That's locally grown hemp. For all you that are wondering, we didn't fly it in. We drove to it, and by we, it's not me. I didn't do any driving. It's the collective metaphorical we. Feel me? But anyway, thank you, Black Cottage Alchemy, for sponsoring this show. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson on YouTube, minus the music, gets posted up after this. There's podcast stuff that it's on too, but I don't keep track of that. Pilco's the man doing that. Gracias to you, sir. And Canna-Talk ND on Instagram, except I have been, I've felt convicted that it's been sucking too much of my time. And as an addict, I don't know if I'm always an addict, but I do certainly have addictive personalities, and Instagram was feeding right into that. So I've tried to delete it, but I have to remember a password to do it, and I don't, I just don't remember stuff very well. And passwords, I know what you're thinking. I should have wrote it down somewhere, and I did. I'm sure I did. But probably on a gum wrapper that I've since cleaned up, with the rest of the debris during cleanup day. So anyway, again, you're listening to KRFF 95.9, LPFM Moorhead Fargo, RadioFreeFargo.org, streaming everywhere. And I mean everywhere. You mean even in Ukraine? Yep, even in Ukraine. And I feel like Ukraine's got, with the word you, it's like, I feel like I could make a joke there, but I got nothing. But anyway, 420, we'll open a big fat bag of cannabis news. We'll talk of something, a little bit about North Dakota after this musical break. I got a little, and I don't know what's going on and why, if this is like an anniversary, but this stinking Todd Rundgren guy, I thought because I'd heard so much about him, he had died, but he's definitely not dead, but apparently he's a pioneer for stuff. So I thought, well, let's listen to this. Bang the drum all day, 95.9. I don't want to work either. But don't tell my boss, but I'm not gonna. I lied. Bang the drum all day. Todd Rundgren, 1982, here at KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org, streaming wherever you are. Right before me was Side Stage with Trav. I'm Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. The Canna before the talk is indicative of cannabis discussion, cannabis news, cannabis legalization, the benefits of cannabis, and just general cannabis info that happened the week prior or today, but certainly not further than 7 days ago, because that would have been covered in the last week's Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, welcome back. And we're going to talk a little bit about North Dakota, and this is kind of interesting. I'll probably bring it up again at 4:20. But I got a few minutes, so let's do it. Now, this is from Cannabis Moment. North Dakota bill allowing people in hospice care to self-certify as medical cannabis patients heads to governor's desk. And this is kind of crazy. The legislation from Representative Mary Schneider cleared the House in an 86-6 vote. And the Senate unanimously in a 45-0 vote last week. I don't know how often it unanimously happens. It now heads to the desk of Governor Dougie B. Now, because it got such a resounding, vote clearance, they expect him to sign it. Now, before we go any further, this was supposed to be the self-certification bill that included people 65 years and older, which would have made this a really, really good bill if they cared. If legislators listened to the people, if legislators had their collective heads out of their collective arrogance hole, all right? Because this one feels like it feels like it's shrouded in care, right? Like, bless their hearts, hospice isn't a great place to be. Everybody knows it's for the terminal. They don't give you any chance to live. So it's like, well, what harm could it do, right? What harm could it do? It's almost like you value the life less, so go ahead and throw caution to the wind, right? Because why couldn't people 65 years and older do the exact same thing? Why did they have to amend that out? Why did they not think that was a good idea? And then try to make me feel like they're doing these people who are terminally ill a solid, when it really kind of sounds like they just don't care about old people 65 years and older. And if you're going to die anyway, why not? Let's give them a little weed. They're going to be dead anyway, right? Like, it starts to feel a little calloused. However, I guarantee you would deny that that's why they do it. But I remember when medical first started to kind of roll out, it was for wasting disease. It was for, again, the people that were past the point of any medical care. So why not? They're just vegetables anyway. Let's let them use it. But if they have self-thought, if they're independent at all, well, let's force them to take meds that we can get kickbacks on. Because otherwise, in all the states that have medically, approved it for a lot of things, and in Arizona, it looks like they're going to allow autism to be eligible for medical cannabis, which is cool, and PTSD. But that's a given. I feel like that should be the first one on the list. But anyway, let's keep cruising here. So under the proposal, terminally ill patients could use proof of their admittance in a hospice care in lieu of a doctor's written recommendation to register as a medical cannabis patient. As introduced, the measure, like I said, would have given the self-certification option to any person age 65 and older, but that was amended out, right, by the House Human Services, right? Got the word humane in there, missing an E, of course. The legislation states that regulators would have to issue a cannabis patient card within 14 days of receiving the documentation, and application fees would be waived. In the interest of expediency, the bill also makes it so designated caregivers would be able to pick up cannabis products for patients in hospice without going through a background check, just as they're currently allowed to do for terminally ill patients. Senate Majority Caucus Leader Kristen said when someone is in hospice, they often don't have the time to go through the entire process. It just seems like they're just so cavalier. Yeah, because they're dying, Well, why are we even putting hoops up anyway? I mean, what? And so I wanted to allow there to be a little bit easier of a path. Oh, a little bit easier? How about a lot easier? I'm going to make it a lot easier. I mean, what's the matter with you? So anyway, a little bit easier of a path if somebody was admitted into a hospice program to be able to obtain medical cannabis while they're in that. Rohr has added that cannabis can be used as a substitute for opioids, and so access to cannabis could help them to be more alert in those final days and final hours of their lives that they spend with their families. Now, let's just sit there for a minute. It could help them be more alert than what? Than the opioids? The pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies and doctors would prefer to prescribe you, which are expensive, by the way. And usually there's some left over in a medicine cabinet that people like me would come by and grab. Or hospice nurses, or the ones that come and clean. Or dumpster divers that are diving in all those funky, medicine cabinet / funny bathroom trash can bags. Where these usually end up being tossed. However, if cannabis got thrown, which would probably be rare, there wouldn't be any issues. You wouldn't have anybody ODing from cannabis after this loved one passed. But it is interesting that access to cannabis could help them to be more alert, and this is a quote, to be more alert in those final days and final hours of their lives that they spend with their families, which suggests that opioids don't allow that. All right, you're listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every Thursday I get in here, 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and that's just right around the corner. I just wanted to get this in, programming on 95.9 Radio Free Fargo. It's being underwritten by Drummer's Journey. Drummer's Journey offers percussion instruments, hardware, electronics, accessories, and more. They have full service for drummers, including repair, custom building, and lessons. Drummer's Journey is located at Highway 10 East Mall, Moorhead, Minnesota. Their hours are Monday through Thursday, 11 to 7, Fridays and Saturdays, 11 to 5, Sundays, noon to 5. For more info, check drummersjourney.com. They have a profile on Facebook. Now, let's do a little Chapter 7 featuring Ty. Here's the Ezra Collective on 95.9. And welcome back. Chapter 7 featuring Ty. That was Ezra Collective on KRFF 95.9 Radio. FreeFargo.org, streaming everywhere you want to be. We're there. It's 4:20. So, scurry to the freezer. Get you some ice. If you got a medical card. And I'll see you on the other side of this Radio Free Fargo.
Hey, it's Phil from Cannaheads. Like this episode? Hit that like button. And if you enjoy the show, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on cannabis news, local and national. Listen live on 95.9 in the Fargo, North Dakota region from 4 to 5 p.m. on Thursday. For our non-Fargo region friends, you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Now enjoy the show.
Well, I won't keep you waiting that much longer. Hello, everybody. Howdy, howdy, howdy. It is Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. I'm your boy, Wilson. We're going to get into some of these articles and some of these news stories regarding cannabis and cannabis legalization. If you were with me for the segment prior, I discussed North Dakota bill allowing people in hospice care to self-certify as medical cannabis patients. Heads to governor's desk. I feel like there should have been a pronunciation in there or a punctuation, but whatever. This is from Cannabis Moment. And I was reading it. And so, in terms of self-certification, this is just some added stuff. The mayor of Washington, D.C. signed legislation in January that codifies the rights of adults 21 and older to become medical cannabis patients without a doctor's recommendation, effectively circumventing a congressional spending bill rider that blocks the district from using its tax dollars to set up a system of rec sales despite voters approving legalization. So, back in North Dakota, voters have twice rejected ballot proposals to legalize cannabis for adult use. So, the ballot initiative was similar to a bill that was introduced in the legislature in 2021. Proposal by Representative Jason passed House, defeated in full Senate after advancing out of committee. So, meanwhile, another bill to significantly expand North Dakota's current cannabis decrim policy cleared the House, but later defeated in the Senate. So, I mean, it's been an uphill battle out of the gate. So, if you weren't listening or you haven't been paying attention, they did, in fact, allow the increase in milligrams of concentrates from 4,000 to 6,000. So that's good. But this thing here is the proposal, and it cleared the House 86-6. It was unanimous in the Senate 45-0. But again, this was originally, as introduced, the measure would have given the self-certification option to any person age 65 and older. But that was amended out by our lovely legislators that you voted in. The legislation states that regulators would have to issue a cannabis patient card within 14 days of receiving the documentation, and application fees would be waived. Now, hospice is basically end-of-life care. They don't expect you to, well, it's not like they don't expect you to live. They know you won't. All right, so when someone is in hospice, they often don't have time to go through the entire process. You know, it's just so patronizing. Oh, they don't? They're stinking dying. You know, why are we even like... So I wanted to allow there be a little easier of a path. How about a lot easier of a path? How about just allowing it without any sort of hoops? These guys are dying. Why are we putting hoops at all? You know? But what I thought was interesting, and I read this quote in the last segment, Roars added that the cannabis can be used as a substitute for opioids. And that sentence alone, knowing that, like, she must believe it, right? I believe it. But why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to use it as the substitute? You know? I mean, it could also be used as a substitute for stupid aspirin or Benadryl, for that matter. It's anti-inflammatory. It's neuroprotective. It helps with sleep. And you don't have to take a stupid, scientifically created pill that's just forcing money into people's pockets that really just don't care about you. They just really don't. It's just the almighty dollar. So anyway, so she says, this could help them be more alert in those final days and final hours of their lives that they spend with their families. And that just seems like it's a contradiction to, or as opposed to, being a vegetable on opioids that is normally and vastly and rampantly subscribed. It just seems to be the norm. Let's just make them comfortable, but they won't be able to even know where they are. They won't know about their family being in the room. They won't know nothing. Whereas this, according to her, would help them be more alert in those final days. Well, what? So why couldn't 65 years and older, an aging community who's still got all their faculties, not be allowed to self-certify? Especially when we're talking about opioid substitution. Because I would argue that there's way more of them than people in hospice. So they're like, well, it's only going to be a few bucks that we'll lose. You know, there's only be a few bucks. Why not? You know? So it just seems kind of almost cavalier. But I wonder, you know, and I'm not saying cannabis is necessarily the magical mystery plant that would reverse hospice situations, but it would be interesting to see if there would ever be bounce back. You know, all of a sudden these guys aren't dying anymore. All of a sudden they start to have a new lease on life. Maybe they start to want to fight because they are more alert in their final days. And maybe their body has just one last little do in them, and it just needed a catalyst that would balance their homeostasis, reduce, say, inflammation in their heart, or who knows? I mean, it's been used in cancer, you know, in curing cancers. There's cases where it's been. I personally know them. I've seen the reports. I've seen the circles on the lumps in the in the stinking lymph nodes that are no longer there. And the only medicine they used was RSO, which is Rick Simpson oil, for you unknowings, right? So it would be interesting to see what happens here. You know, I'm not saying it's going to save everybody, but I'd be interested to see if end of life ever became, maybe not. I mean, Betty was on her last leg, because she only had one leg. All right. Was on her last leg, opted for cannabis as the terminally ill patient could self-certify and do, and now all of a sudden she's making breakfast for all her young grandkids. And she's no longer on hospice anymore. That would be neat. That would be neat. But anyway, you're listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every Thursday I get in here. 420, open a big fat bag of cannabis news, and that's what we're doing right now. But again, North Dakota is allowing hospice patients to self-certify, and bless their hearts, they're making it a little easier to get access because they're dying soon. I mean, I don't know. I don't love it. The wording is a little weird, but let's keep talking about this. Cannabis moment. Top federal health official says cannabis scheduling review still needs to go through, and I quote, a few hoops. The secretary, home health secretary, took to Twitter to share a media clip. He says, I see the comments, and I know a lot of you are asking about the status of cannabis. I hear you, and just know that we are trying to work quickly, but still have a few hoops we need to jump through. As always, the science will guide this decision. And it oozes arrogance and self-importance. It just does. I can't stand to hear stuff like that. Because you read between the lines, they just don't care. Because if they cared, we wouldn't be getting this patronizing talking down to by the Secretary Xavier. The science will guide this decision. I mean, I think there's a lot of science out there already. So they want to know, what's taking so long? So in an interview, he asked, would he make his decision by April 20th? He laughed and said, I know we're going to try to move quickly. So that takes away all the responsibility away. So that's just crazy to me. For what it's worth, there weren't any states where cannabis was legal for any purposes in 1996. He also notably added that the assessment will take into account whether or not we can show that there's been a change since the early 1990s and what cannabis means to America. And again, it was all lip service. It was all pandering. I don't believe that they truly looked into it. So anyway, polling shows that support for ending cannabis prohibition altogether hovered around 20 to 30% in the early 90s, whereas now almost 7 in 10 Americans back full legalization. That's a lot of people. So, the FDA under HHS will conduct a review. FDA similarly said that DEA has the final word, which isn't a good thing. It sounds horrible. Garland said at a Senate hearing this month that Department of Justice is still working on a cannabis policy while awaiting the results of the scientific review from health agencies. It's just a big, stupid mess. I don't buy it for a second. It's just all talky talk. UK cops just discovered 3 million pounds, and by pounds I mean money, not poundy pounds, worth of cannabis growing in an old bingo spot. Oh, $4.20 for 6, Pat. UK cops just discovered nearly $3.7 million of cannabis growing in a former bingo hall in South Wales. Earlier this month, the UK energy supplier notified police that an abandoned building in Barrie was consuming an awful lot of electricity. It didn't take long for cops to discover what was eating up all that energy. I bet they didn't. I bet they didn't hurry. I bet they hurried. But they got right over there. Inside the 6-story bingo hall. How much bingo's going on in there? Cops found more than 3,000 illegal cannabis plants growing under a huge DIY array of grow lights and fans. Police valued each individual plant as high as they possibly could, $1,200 at current black market prices, bring it to about $3.67 million. Those plants are worth nothing now because the cops have destroyed each and every seed, stem, and flower. Those heathens. Investigators are still working to clean the site and remove thousands of pounds worth of growing equipment and fertilizer from the premises. Cops also discovered beds in the kitchen and clothes, suggesting that some of the cannabis farmers were probably living on site. Boy, those cops are geniuses, aren't they? Like, I wouldn't be able to tell that. I couldn't figure that out. I mean, I would be like, beds in the kitchen and clothes? There's no way people are living here. What a bunch of idiots. No one was around at the time of the bust, so cops are still on the hunt. I doubt they are. Many people think it's just a bit of cannabis, but any production of drugs is linked to hidden harm. See, that's crazy. Hidden harm. Which means they don't even know. Nobody knows. These are just fun words. I mean, is linked to hidden harm, which means nobody can see it. So, what kind of harm is hidden harm? Right? These large operations are often run by organized crimes. Often, they don't know. Who are likely to engage, they're not sure, in very serious violence. So they tag this stuff on. The electrical requirements to grow this many plants are also really dangerous. How dangerous is it? And can be a huge fire risk. How huge? putting neighboring properties and lives in danger. I mean, really? So, of course, British authorities could easily resolve these issues by taking cannabis production away from criminal gangs and just putting it into the hands of licensed legal growers, of course. UK still continues to prohibit cannabis, and authorities even recently tried to increase the penalties. Instead of wasting billions of dollars a year cracking down on illicit dealers, the country could legalize adult use sales, a decision that could boost the economy by nearly $1 billion. Now, apparently, they're getting, and I've mentioned this before, all these people flying it, brazenly flying it, and they call them underemployed Americans, which is a crazy title that I don't know could be founded on any sort of fact, to brazenly fly into the country with hundreds of pounds of Cali cannabis in their luggage, which is currently a big seller in the UK, fetching nearly $28 a gram. Crazy. Czech Republic Cannabis Magazine editor-in-chief found guilty for publishing cannabis content. He's guilty of inciting the abuse of addictive substances and spreading drug addiction through his magazine. Again, there's just very, very little factual basis that it's abusive and addictive. You know, it just, I'm telling you, if it was that bad, how come fentanyl is bad? How can you say fentanyl's bad? Because of the stats. I mean, go to stinking Pennsylvania. What is that? Lancaster Avenue. And watch all those jerky, twitchy weirdos on fentanyl. And find me an avenue that's full of the twitchy, tweaky, toddling, bobbling statues with that, what is it, the gravel, the flacco? Apparently they can't move. They're just statues. They just stand there for a long time. That seems like that might be abusive, and it might not be good, and I wouldn't want any editor posting a magazine that was promoting fentanyl or that flacco, aka gravel. Google it. Now we got Killeen, Texas. Police have finally released 77% of cannabis offenders since local decrim, which means they arrested these cats anyway. And now they were forced to let them go. So they've released 77% of the individuals they have come in contact who are in possession of cannabis. Police chief said officers had contacted 188 individuals who had some sort of cannabis on them since the passage of the law. 146 were released because it fell within the guidelines, which they knew, while 42 people were arrested. Those that were released did have their cannabis seized. So, again, not good. Killeen, Texas, don't move there. Under the ordinance, police are not supposed to arrest anyone they find in possession of 4 ounces or less. The measure was approved by nearly 70% of Killeen voters. I'm doubting none of them were cops. In December, Killeen council members amended the law to prevent police officers from using the odor as probable cause. But they were doing it anyway. So now they had to let them all go. My boy Afro Man's getting sued. Now, if you remember, he made a song. He used the raid footage because he had cameras. And just listen to these whiny cops talk about retribution they want. All right, so 7 police officers who helped carry out a raid in Afro Man's house, which they didn't find anything, which it was a kidnapping. They raided him under a kidnapping warrant. Okay, they broke down his door. They took his cash. So the rapper says he plans to countersue. They're now suing the artist over his use of the footage, which is a great song. It's called "Will You Help Me Repair My Door?" 7 police officers are suing the rapper from a raid they carried out in his house last September. Plaintiffs claim that Afro-Man has illegally profited off footage that shows their face without consent, which has resulted in emotional distress. See, they don't care about the emotional distress they caused his family, right? Who cares about any of that, right? Embarrassment. They're suing for embarrassment, ridicule, loss of reputation, and humiliation. Why? Because what you did was wrong. You deserve to feel that. That's how you feel when you do something wrong. You feel guilty. You feel humiliated because you got put on blast for doing something, arrogantly coppish. All right? That's what you get. That's how you're supposed to feel. All right? The lawsuit claims the plaintiffs are entitled to all the proceeds. So they're emotionally distressed, they're embarrassed, they're ridiculed. So give us all the money you made from our distress that we chose to do. We didn't. Nobody forced them to raid his house for a goofy warrant. They didn't find anything. All right? So, during the raid, armed police officers forcibly entered the home to ultimately confiscate a vape pen, a couple of roaches, and several $1,000s of cash, which he didn't get all back. So, police also damaged his front gate and security camera systems and traumatized his family. So, Castellini, which is a great name for an attorney if you need one and your name's Afro Man, we are waiting for public record requests from Adams County we still have not received. We are planning to countersue for the unlawful raid, money being stolen, and for the undeniable damages had on my client's family, career, and property. Which that is a valid reason to sue. Not cops who, because what? If they hadn't been filmed, they would have been what? They would have felt justified? They were still doing something wrong, right? So, boo on the cops in Ohio. Pennsylvania workers' comp plans must cover medical cannabis costs. This is from Firestone. Pennsylvania court just ruled that state workers' comp program must reimburse patients for the cost of medical cannabis. The ruling was issued in the case of Paul Sheets, who sued his former employer, Firestone Tire and Rubber, for refusing to cover his medical cannabis costs under the workman's comp plan. Firestone refused to cover the cost, however, arguing that federal law prohibited them from paying for a controlled substance. See, they just love saying that. They just love it. It was an injury he suffered in 1977. Now, he won, but he's dead. All right? So, the MMA specifically mandates that no medical cannabis patients be denied any rights for lawful use of medical cannabis. So, I think federally it really needs to, it's got to be the next step, I think. It's just getting too convoluted. So here's Cannabis Moment. Major Alcohol Industry Association calls for medical or federal cannabis legalization, recommending regulatory framework. So major alcohol industry associations, and this is a pretty good article talking about why it should happen. The association made two main points in its letter. One, the current system for the regulation of alcohol serves as a strong model for cannabis, and a piecemeal approach to cannabis reform is untenable, so lawmakers should comprehensively address this issue. Because it's just, and it's not going away, all the states. It's just a big goofy mess. All right. So we're going to keep cruising because I'm talking my way out of a show here. Canna-Talk ND with Wilson every Thursday here on KRF F 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org. Tennessee legislators demand return of children to parents after cannabis possession arrest. Following a misdemeanor arrest for cannabis possession at a traffic stop, 5 kids were taken into custody. On March 16th, the Tennessee Democratic Caucus demanded that 5 children taken during traffic stop be returned to their parents immediately. Now, this is kind of an interesting story. Her kids were forcibly removed from her side while an officer restrained her from reaching for her crying baby. It's so shocking to the conscience that in 2023 this is happening, said one of the couple's attorneys. I just have to believe if my clients looked different or had a different background, they would have just been given a citation and told you just keep this stuff away from the kids while you're in this state, and they'd be on their way. So, it's been over a month since the incident, and the children still have not been returned to the family. The events of this incident have reached state legislators who are now also speaking up. One senator said it's ridiculous overuse of power. But now they tested them and they had like fentanyl and meth in their system. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about this case. I'm just reporting the news. Texas lawmakers vote to allow medical cannabis as opioid alternative while replacing THC limit. That's cool. We're about to the end of this thing. Cannabis Moment. I just wanted to give you another shout out. Minnesota, or another update on the committees here in Minnesota. Minnesota lawmakers approved cannabis legalization bill with overhaul amendment in House committee. So another Minnesota House committee has approved a bill to legalize cannabis. So I don't know how many that is, but we're almost to a floor vote. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out. Again, if I was a betting man, this thing's going to pass, and Minnesota's going to have legal cannabis by June. But that's just that's just kind of a guess that I have. So in review, North Dakota allows terminal patients in hospice to self-certify so they can expedite some relief. And the quote, and I'm going to butcher it, so it's not really a quote. I paraphrase a quote that says, cannabis is used as a substitute to opioids, and this would allow them to be more alert and present with their families and comfortable, which I would, how come opioids can't do that? And if opioids can't do that, why are we still pushing opioids then? Right? Why? You should have to jump through hoops to get opioids. And it should all be cannabis for into life, if that's what you're saying. If that's the plus for cannabis, is that they're alert and aware so they can be with their families the last moments of their life as opposed to be snowed over by, Oxycontin or fentanyl. You know what I mean? But anyway, this has been another rabble-rousing version of Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Every Thursday I get in here, 4:20, open a big fat bag of cannabis news. I'll be back next Thursday unless I'm not. But programming on KRFF, LPFM, Radio Free Fargo 95.9 FM is being underwritten by Flatland Guitar and Lutherie. Flatland Guitar is your full-service guitar shop and your exclusive dealer for Yamaha, Taylor, Paul Reed Smith guitars and other brands. They sell guitars on consignment. They take trade-ins, have a full-service on-site repair center. Check out Flatland Guitar and Lutherie on Facebook or visit them in person at 1450 25th Street South in Fargo. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and close on the Lord's Day. Thank you for joining me. We're going to play another little song. I'm going to come back, rep this thing up. This is Vinny the Crow with Jeff Coffin, 95.9. Vinny the Crow featuring Michael League. Hello, everybody. I'm back. Sorry. Forgive me. KRFF 95.9, RadioFreeFargo.org. You've been listening to Canna-Talk ND with Wilson. Up next is Stinky Arts Music Mart. I can smell them from here, so I can assure you it's going to happen. So put your seatbelt on for some of that. This show is brought to you by Black Cottage Alchemy, blackcottagealchemy.com, Black Cottage Alchemy on Facebook. I'll be back in next Thursday, 4 o'clock, 4:20. I'll open a big fat bag of cannabis news like you know I do. So you guys be good to yourselves, educate yourselves on the benefits of cannabis so you can educate others on the benefits of cannabis. Here's David Allen, Judgment Day. Peace.